You're listening to the Nerd to Know Media Network. Join us at nerdtoknowmedia.com.
Broadcasting from the Blanchistan Center, this is Phoenix FM.
The internet is a communications tool used the world over where people can come together to bitch about movies and share pornography with one another.
According to the Nerd Index, you should be upside down in a junior high toilet around the clock.
This is We'll do it live! Time goes in, time goes out. Never miscommunication.
It's over 9,000! My name is Foxy.
The balls are in there.
Don't face me, bro! It's a trap! I'm a firing believer! Time to Hey, Charlie, wake up! Oh, God, oh, man!
Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Nerd to Know Basis Show on Spotify and Phoenix 92.5 FM. I am Cian, and introduce yourselves in roughly alphabetical order.
Hey, yo, it's Bryn.
And it's Kev.
There you go.
Yeah.
No hesitation. Excellent, guys. You're off to a great start.
It's solid. I also have to, I do have to commend you on the way that you count yourself in at the beginning of it. If my only note on it is that I wish you would do a bit more of a Wayne's World-esque lead up on it with the hands. And just go 5, 4, 3.
I see. So we're getting some behind the scenes info. My chair also just crashed down for some reason.
Yeah, I'm pulling the curtain back.
No expense spared here on Nerd to Know Basis. We are truly professional out here.
Absolutely. You know, if you couldn't tell by our lack of show plans and you know, a constantly rotating cast of people.
What do you mean constantly rotating? There's like 4.5 of us, and usually 3 turn up. It's fine.
Yeah, it's still a rotation.
Consistency. We wish we had it. Nerd to Know Media.
Right. Excellent. So sadly, Dara can't be here tonight, which means there will be no new installment of Dara getting kicked out of cinemas for increasingly implausible reasons. So we're going to do something radically different on this episode. We're going to cover the news first. So, Kev, would you like to lead with the news?
And what a week to do it, because boy howdy, there's not much news.
Bear in mind, I am fighting a month and a half's worth of backlogged news. So I know you have a story, so we'll lead with that.
Incredible timing from us, as always, with our professional setup.
But Dara could show up at any minute. Let's just pull through this pretty quickly.
What we can. Well, the headline that kind of piqued my interest was that apparently, for some reason, Hollywood have decided they want to get Michael Bay to remake The Raid, one of the most critically acclaimed foreign films of the past decade. And I see this, and first thought, hey, Hollywood, you did this. It's called Dread, and it was great. And second point,
see it.
And second point, it brings me up in this mind, of like, why do they keep remaking these movies? Like, it's never going to be as good, and all you're doing is making it white.
but as well as that, I mean, like, anytime they've ever done this, has it ever like reached the same level of acclaim or fanfare when, like, as the original had? Like, I mean, you know, when they remade Old Boy, I don't remember being anywhere near as successful. I don't recall it being anywhere near as successful as the original. Maybe the Grudge movies were, but that, like, they're probably the closest thing.
Yeah, Ghost in the Shell, very similar. Like, you know, I suppose you're hitting the mark.
Ghost in the Shell's a whole other conversation, Keane.
Oh, I agree, but I'm just saying there's a market of people, again, like Cowboy Bebop, maybe, where they haven't seen the original, they're not interested in the original, but if it comes out in a more accessible way,
considering how quickly
see what the fuss is, you know?
Considering how quickly Bebop got cancelled, I would say people weren't interested in it.
Yeah, like
there is a petition to get it back. It's hit like 100,000 signatures or something.
It just, for me, it just feels like, because like the reason is obviously money. And I think a lot of these remakes, while will get panned, will still make at least their budget back, if not way more than the small, low budget. Correct me if I'm wrong. The raid was Taiwanese, right?
Indonesian.
Pardon me. Probably a very low budget Indonesian action flick. Would have. So it is all money, but it seems to me like they should just be putting the resources into funding these foreign movies that are starting to get traction, and just using whatever budget they planned on remaking it into just advertising. Hey, this really good movie, actually.
Yeah, I don't understand why they can't just bring a dump truck of money over to Tony Jaa and just go make something. Like the closest thing they're doing now is like, hey, American populace, here's our friend Bong Joon-ho. You will know him now and you will like him. Yeah. I say this, and 5 years from now, I'm cold calling it. They're going to remake Parasite. Probably, yeah.
They've already remade. Actually,
what am I saying? They've already remade Snowpiercer.
Yeah, it's a TV show now. You know, because
we can't have nice things.
Because, like, you know, they needed to cash in on a remake of a remake of done by a South Korean person using a French graphic novel.
Oh, there's a lot of Venn diagram levels there. But actually, Kev, I wanted to ask you about this. Because of the success of Parasite and Squid Game, like, do you think that, like, because my thought around these kind of remakes and things is they are marketed to a Western audience who won't necessarily go check out a Japanese anime or something just not in English. Now that these kind of non-English things are really breaking in their own right, do you think these remakes might cool off? Or?
I don't think they'll cool off. I'm still fully anticipating an American Squid Game in the next 4 years.
Oh, much sooner than that.
But I definitely, what I'm hoping is that it's just a different trend of just these just really high quality just foreign properties just breaking out, and just because that's kind of just what this landscape needs. Like, America's got a very homogenous media rollout kind of like. There's not a lot of variance. Everyone in Hollywood is playing it as safe as can be. So like it takes just kind of different cultures just to at least kind of put just a splash of something different. That's kind of why like so many people go to anime over what was mainstream animation at the time, because there was just nothing exciting happening there about 10 years ago. And now you have all these traders that jumped ship and went to watch all this wild 80s anime. And are now coming back, experience like completely soaked in that with those experiences, and now making really creative stuff in the US sphere. That's just kind of what this needs. So all I hope is that this creates that exposure of just, hey, stuff from like Southeast Asia and just beyond all over the world is just great.
Well, do you think there is a role for the remakes to play in? Because like we're watching Cowboy Bebop at the moment, the original. We haven't seen the new show yet, but we started rewatching it because the remake drew our attention back to it. Do you think there's a role for these remakes to draw attention to the original, even if the remakes aren't as good?
For now, yes. As I said, I think what I hope for is, as these original properties just get bigger and bigger and just start smashing all these records, that, like, you know, the people in charge of them just like realize they don't need to remake a property to get it in the hands if they just actually put the effort in and advertise the original property.
Advertise. We'll get an English language like Hero Academia or One Punch Man someday?
It might have been like spam headlines. I'm nearly certain I've seen headlines kicking around. There was Fleeting J.J. Abrams is allegedly doing a Your Name remake. So like,
oh my god, there'll be
Yeah.
some fierce lens flare off that comet.
oh, and it's hey, you know that movie that had an ending? It's gonna suck now. That ending either not gonna happen or it's gonna be bad.
Oh look,
So it's going to be entirely passable. And
moaning about J.J. Abrams, even though he wasn't relevant in the news.
no,
We'll put him. I'm horrified.
it's easy to kick chunks in J.J. Abrams. Would you not be concerned though that there's also the risk of us going down, having what happened in games where, a huge, like once Dark Souls got popular, the amount of pressure to make Souls-like games went massive, and you just kept seeing new Dark Souls clones coming out.
Yeah, that's another thing. I think like you're probably going to see a lot of death game stuff, and I say probably going to see a lot more societal commentary stuff on Parasite, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Hey, so yeah, like that's like Hollywood. We've known this for several decades. Hollywood's been around. They never learn their lesson. They take the wrong lessons. Yeah, we're going to see a lot of death games coming out soon.
Yeah, because how could you do like Squid Game's a really interesting case. Squid Game and Parasite actually, because they're so critical of these sort of elitist systems. How could you remake it without that cynicism?
Oh no, they're going to suck it dry of any sort of social pressure undertone and just make it of, look, hey, big scary fun game, don't worry about the capitalist implications, we're just going to bury that.
I mean, at the same time, it's not like they've shied away from the idea of having there be like class struggles in films before, in popular cinema before. Like, I mean, it's very prevalent in the Hunger Games series, but it's always populated in a very specific kind of way to go, well, we're not the bad guys. It's like, no, you're funded by the bad guys though, aren't you?
I mean, yes, mass media does kind of have social problems and that kind of stuff in their stuff, but like it kind of comes down to where the responsibility lies. Like the Hunger Games is an interesting one because it's not like adapting a very specific like world. It's very kind of makey-uppy, and there's one dictator to be overthrown, and obviously the lines get blurred closer to the end of the series, but like it doesn't say why these people in Sector 13 and these people in Sector 1 are the way they are and how we got here. But something like Parasite and Squid Game, they do. Like they very clearly illustrate that being in debt is not a personal failing, it's a societal failing. And even if they remade it in the West, I don't think they keep that critical component.
That's a specific. It's interesting because that is definitely specific. That is definitely a specific foible that would not be present. It would be there in subtext, but not. It would not be on a direct, literal level.
No.
Yes. That's fair.
It's because both of these weren't created to appeal to a mass market. Both of these were simply created because that was just the creative vision of their progenitors. And the idea to remake this is simply just to cash in on the name brand, cash in on like the knowledge that, hey, everybody knows this. So they're going to make it as widely appealing as possible, which means blunting as many edges as they can while still making it recognizable.
Sorry, can I just check? Kev, is it still recording?
Yeah.
Awesome. Sorry, I just made you the leader in case my internet dies, which it does often. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what gets remade next, because I don't think something like Cowboy Bebop would have been considered a safe bet 10 years ago. You know what I mean? And even though we can people complain about the remake, it is indicative of it's an acknowledgement of sort of Japanese kind of stuff being a huge kind of cultural force now. I mean, you can suppose you could like it got a much bigger support and press than say like the Death Note live action thing got a few years ago, you know?
Yeah, no, but I think again, it is following trends that like with the massive rise of proliferation of streaming services and all of that, like that's like anime is kind of like anime and a lot of that kind of creative Southeast Asian work is just kind of coming right back up into the cultural zeitgeist.
I also think that it's a huge part of it is that we like in terms of like how media promotes this stuff, it's gotten a lot better. You know, like when Death Note came out, there was in terms of like trying to get it promoted outside of sites that were already covering anime, you didn't really see much of it, you know, whereas like Cowboy Bebop, you would see advertisements for it on YouTube, which you definitely did not see for Death Note, like, and that's a huge difference in terms of like how much it was being pushed into the mainstream. And,
well, I suppose,
you know,
like,
I would say comparatively Bebop has a lot more to gain in terms of the mainstream audience versus Death Note. Like, I mean, you're talking about something that can be basically seen as being a bit of a space western versus something that's very much a supernatural horror.
Yeah, that's fair. That's a fair point. But like, I think the other development is that I suppose when Death Note came out, Netflix was kind of the only horse in the game as far as that. And now there's a greater, to be honest, we've kind of come full circle and it is just TV now. Yep. Now Disney Plus, and I know you want to talk about something on Prime, they all have to have a big signature show that comes out every month to draw in your attention. Whereas with like, if Netflix was the only one there, they could make something and trust that someone somewhere would watch it, you know?
Confidence from them of going, well, you've watched everything else on our platform. You might as well watch this, you know?
Oh, that's exactly it. I mean, like, but I know you've got to talk about the specific Prime thing, which we're going to get into now. But I've been rewatching all the Netflix Marvel property stuff, and it's actually quite a lot better than I remembered, like the Jessica Joneses and Daredevils and all that kind of stuff. I was expecting it to be a little bit dated, but like,
I mean, like the first season of Daredevil is still one of my favorite seasons of anything ever. Wow. I can take or leave the other two seasons of it. I love the first season, Jessica Jones. I love the first half of Luke Cage. I love the second half of Iron Fist season 1. I haven't seen the second season for Luke Cage or for Iron Fist or the
do actually check them out. Sure. They're like, it's really sad because they get it working just before they get cancelled in that typical fashion. Like, you know, Iron Fist especially, like, you know, they just trim it down and make him likable, and suddenly it's the best version of itself, and no one saw it, you know,
because they had like a major character point happen for him at the end of the Defenders. It kind of meant that they were throwing the first season of Iron Fist under the bus. I would still say the first season of it, like what's his like his like adoptive brother's name in it? I can't think of it.
The kind of rival villain character.
Kind of, yeah. Like
the guy played by the actor who plays the Master now, by Sacha Dhawan. Davos, is it? Yeah. No, it's something like that.
Yeah, that dude is he's so enjoyable in especially in the second half of the show. Like, he just become in the second half of season 1 because his character just starts to really go off the rails with paranoia. Because and it's understandable, his dad has cameras everywhere. And like there's this great moment where he starts flipping off the entire room because he knows his dad is watching.
Oh, sorry. Are we talking about different characters? Are you talking about like the brother who was like born into wealth? Yeah. Like that one? Yeah. Oh, I thought you were talking about the kind of the other Iron Fist disciple from a temple who turns up.
No. Not him. No, his brother was born into wealth. The guy who's the son of of
I know what you're talking about, but that's why I recommend series 2, because like series 2 leads into the silliness of all of it. Like you have the evil sister from that rich family and Davos in league together, and they know they're going to be villains. So like Iron Fist and what's her name, Colleen, invite them over to dinner to try and hash it out, which is the funniest thing ever. Like they just sat there with these like sour pusses on their faces, and they're like, try the pasta. Like, you know, no one else thought of it.
Yeah, that's great. That's so good.
You've got Alice Eve as like from Star Trek Into Darkness as like Typhoid Mary with her split personality kicking around the place. Like, you know, it's just they fix it and no one saw it. And it's such a shame. Like,
yeah, the Defenders, like, I think everyone started seeing the cracks in the first Iron Fist series. The Defenders, I think, put the nail to the coffin for a lot of people. Because I remember watching that and be like, okay, so this is just another Daredevil season. And the other three are just kind of hanging around. I remember watching that and thinking, was like, I love Jessica Jones. She is the main reason I'm keeping up with these series. Why is she actually in this show? Because she kind of just keeps showing up.
Yeah. I actually really liked the Defenders. I just didn't. But it was kind of just, at that point, it was kind of like a sunk cost thing of like, I really liked Luke Cage. I really liked Jessica Jones. I tolerated.
There was a feeling they were leading up to something and they kind of just never did.
Well, I did a Geek Ireland piece on this recently, and it's just like, the real strength of that Netflix verse was that you were able to have these kind of social issues in your Marvel entertainment, and you're not going to get that much in the movies. And so the maddening decision to have, you know, a lawyer, a detective, like a sort of a symbol of the community in Luke Cage, and
a kung fu socialite.
Yes, they are all going to use their diverse set of skills to take on ninjas. It's such a waste. Like, imagine if you're up against like David Tennant's Kilgrave and you had to like have her doing her detective work, and maybe they ended up in court, and then like all their worlds and skills, but instead they're just punching people, you know?
I think that's probably one of the, you know, as much as I loved the first season of Jessica Jones, I think it's probably it was a bit of a misstep to have Kilgrave in it that early.
It did peak it a little bit soon.
There's so much they could have done with that character.
I mean, I applaud them for the bravery of just killing him, because you run the risk, which did kind of happen to Daredevil, of your villain upstaging your hero. They needed something, because like there's loads of bits of the Defenders that's great. I love Jessica Jones and Matt Murdock hanging out. I love all their little families of characters mingling. Luke Cage makes Iron Fist likable. My favorite moment in the entire Netflix Daredevil verse, whatever you call it, is like Luke Cage sitting Iron Fist down and saying, "You're a multi-billionaire. What are you doing running around Harlem beating up kids? Go to your office, use a computer, go straight to the CEO of this company." And he does it, and it works. Does he not have a brain? Like,
you have to remember, he was raised by monks.
Punching is all he knows.
Yeah, basically. You know.
Oh my!
You don't call him Iron Brain.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, basically. But
that's what I mean, though. Like, that's what why the Defenders and the misusing of Sigourney Weaver and all that is such a shame, because the important stuff works. I would say,
but it's even like, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the, like, I mean, I know in season 2 people loved the Punisher being in it.
Oh yeah,
and I found on my second rewatching that's like, his stuff is really compelling, but it doesn't contribute towards what the season is going to close on. So why is it there?
Well,
because
I would
all
argue
it's doing
that
is making the actual arc for the season bad.
Yeah, but again, that's the Defenders problem, because you have gritty Punisher stuff, and I love all that stuff. Him being in court is like one of my favorite bits in that whole series. but then you're alternating between that and Elektra and the ninjas.
Yeah.
And you're like, these don't mix.
No, not at all.
Chagrin to you for thinking that this mass murderer is Hell's Kitchen's biggest problem, but no, the roving hordes of ninjas.
And what does it culminate to? Punisher shoots one or two ninjas from a distance and then walks away.
Yeah.
It's
for him to show up in his own underwhelming series.
Well, my work here is done. What do you mean your work is done? You didn't do anything.
Didn't I? Yeah. But
oh my god.
What I would say is that, like, on the note of talking about streaming services and shows, I've been catching up with the last season, with the final season of The Expanse.
Yes, you've waited long enough. Let's hear about this.
So it's worth noting that this is the last season of The Expanse, but it's only covering the 6th book out of 9 in the series. They haven't announced what's coming next. There is a feeling there's something else coming, but so it's a shame, because what we're dealing with right now is a fantastic science fiction series that most people have been sleeping on.
Yeah, The Expanse is one of those weird properties. We've probably talked about it before, where not many people I know have watched it, but everyone I know has watched it, loves the bones of it. Like, you know, and like, so you go on.
Yeah, I mean, like, it just scratches a number of itches that you just don't get from other science fiction shows. First of all, the scale of it, especially in the beginning of the show, is really unique, because usually with science fiction, you get 2 scales. One of them is it's sci-fi. It's like a science fiction, but in like the not too distant future. So it's just entirely earthbound science fiction. So like think, like even though there are other planets, like Blade Runner pretty much is an earthbound science fiction thing. Fifth Element is earthbound, but then like the other side of it is where it's just the other thing where like it's just interstellar travel. So like your Star Treks, your Star Warses, Babylon 5, Farscape, so on and so forth. There was very few science fiction, very little science fiction, and especially very little in television stuff where science fiction is just in our solar system.
That's true, because like it's now, I've only seen the first series, but it's about the Earth and is it Mars, isn't it? And so, like the different communities of humans living around there.
So in the first series, you basically have like 3 main plots going on. There's Captain James Holden and the crew of the Canterbury basically going from out of the frying pan into the fire scenarios far too often. And then through what happens with them, it causes ramifications for things in the other 2 main plots. One of the other ones is with a detective called Miller, who works on
the Punisher, Thomas Jane, and his wonderful hat. Yes,
and his wonderful hat and his really nice haircut. He's based on Ceres Station, which is kind of like this asteroid that's been retrofitted into being kind of like a spaceport, and like like it's basically like a giant space station that loads of people live on, but it's like a port and all this other stuff. It's really important economically for Belters who live there. And then he's got to do this whole missing persons case, and that kind of plays out like a neo-noir type thing. It's really it's got this really classic vibe to it. And if you're not that into science fiction, that's definitely something that would be quite attractive about it, because it is very different to what you would see in a standard, what you might think of as being science fiction, because like, most people go like, oh, Star Wars or Star Trek. You don't really see murder mysteries with with those kind of scenarios, right? So it's kind of nice that it's there. And then the third one is with Christian Avasarala, who out of the 3 principals would be my favorite character. She's just it's really hard. It can be really hard to like, sell a character being awesome, but Christian Avasarala is the embodiment of awesome. She's an amazing character in the show.
I think because like here's the thing, my dad is what the kids would call a stan for The Expanse. Has been trying to sell it on me for years, and I truly keep meaning to watch it. I think she's like the small Asian one with an absolute sailor. Yeah.
She was also she played one of the I don't know if either of you played Mass Effect.
Oh yeah.
She was one of the admirals in Tally's fleet.
Yes, I know who you're talking about. She's in loads of things, isn't she?
Yeah. She does. She's doing loads, but like she's brilliant. One of the other things as well is that like if you're looking for strong female characters, this show has so many different kinds. So like, especially by the time you get to like about 3 or 4 seasons deep, you have such a depth of like what strong women can be. It's awesome. But like, yeah, so like basically with her, then she's like dealing with the whole political thing, because basically like you've got these 3 giant factions being Earth, or the United Nations, Mars, or the Mars Congressional Republican Navy, and then you have the Belters, represented by the Outer Planets Alliance, and basically they all have misgivings with each other. Like before the story in the story in the books and the TV show started, Earth and Mars were basically going through this kind of Cold War-esque struggle. It kind of plays out a little bit similarly to how like the differences between Athens and Sparta are depicted in Greek mythology. And like because of the way that because of this arms race they've been having, they have to take resources from the belt, which means that the 2 of them are basically working Belters to the bone, which causes Belters to be like, well, we hate both of you. You're basically the same, and like, it's a really well layered and well thought out show. It's really interesting because like the books themselves were written by 2 guys who were assistants to George R. R. Martin.
Well, I'm glad I didn't know that, but I'm glad you actually highlighted that. I think an obstacle to me getting into it is, as you've kind of illustrated, it's such a complicated show to get initially. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can't elevate or pitch it,
Yeah, it is a complex show, but what I would say is that like a lot of this stuff you kind of get through osmosis. Right. It's not like it's not like both in terms of the books and in terms of the way the show is done. As long as you kind of pay attention to what the characters are doing, the information flows through. You're not going to get most of what I'm saying to you now, you're not going to get on like an initial viewing of it. You would get it on multiple views. Like, again, I've seen the first season a couple of times. I've read the book. I've read the books as well. So I'm very used to it. But there is a lot of there are a lot of layers to it. But in terms of like the main plots of it, one character's dealing with the whole political side of it, and it could be boring, except that she has such a level of charisma to it that she's very compelling, and she's able to carry her scenes incredibly well. If anyone else was playing it, I don't know if it would be as interesting, is the truth of it. And because all 3 of those things are so unique, are so distinct and so clear, it really helps you to follow what's going on, because you're never like, oh, where are they? Oh, okay. Because you're able to go, oh, well, they're on this ship or whatever. He's on Ceres because he's always on Ceres. She's on Earth because she's always on Earth.
Oh yeah, I did watch the first series, and I know it's easy to follow in that respect. I think it's got a similar issue I had to the Dune series, where there's that initial hurdle of so much. It feels like so much to learn. And then you have to break, and then you kind of break into it, and then it all kind of flows.
Yeah,
I'm imagining that putting off more casual people. That's what it's like.
Well, that's like, I think that's like one of the major issues with science fiction in general, especially when you start jumping forward a couple of 100 years, because people have their own notion of how the world is, and you have to bring people a little bit further along in terms of your thought process on it, and that can be a really challenging thing to do, and like, I'd like, from having read the books and everything, I really think they do a really, really good job of doing it. And some of like the smaller details that they have in it are just really like, some of them are just really, really clever, small little details, like learning about how Mars was created as its own entity is really, really cool. But it's one of those things where like I'd nearly need an Expanse exclusive podcast to talk about that detail.
I got bad news for you. You've just made it.
That's the thing. So that's kind of just the thing that's entrenched with sci-fi, is because it's like good sci-fi particularly really kind of rests on just creating these really kind of just weighty kind of world building ideals in this far-flung fantasy world. You really have to just kind of go in suspending your disbelief and just like, particularly with like really creative authors, we'll just start making words up and just talk. So you kind of just have to accept it. And if like my rule of thumb is, if I've made it 200 pages into a sci-fi book and I still don't know what they're talking about, then I'll just start wikiing things.
Absolutely.
You kind of just have to, because you either have to trust that they're going to explain it or just trust that you've got to do some research.
Absolutely. And like, I think, I think that there's like two major pitfalls most science fiction falls into, which is they either get wrapped up in their ideas so much that all they have is ideas and they don't have anything else. Or they get so wrapped up in world building that all they have is world building and they don't have anything else.
I had that recently enough. Have either of you heard of an author called Neil Asher?
I have heard of him, but I haven't read anything by him.
It's good. If you like sci-fi, I'd say it's good. He's definitely like, he's one of these things where he's created this really rich, like, he's one of these authors where he's created dozens of books and all of them are in like the same universe, but they're all short series or individual novels. And the entire premise is it's a far-flung galaxy that's been completely overruled by benevolent AI.
I recognize the covers of these books now. Yeah.
And like, it's kind of just stories in that where you'd have separatists who like human separatists who don't want to live under AI thumb, and various alien races kind of just off on the fringes of it, and just kind of like a whole lot of series that. And his main original series is called Agent Cormac, where it's kind of a Bond action thing where there's not a whole lot of plot, but he introduced just some really cool ideas in it. One of the main antagonists of this are these 4 distinct kilometer diameter fleshy planetoids that refer to themselves as dragon and speak in riddles. And just travel.
I can see why that would appeal to you, yeah.
Just travel from planet to planet and speak in riddle. Or how one of the separatists, because there's obviously AI robots called golems who can, like, are either for manual labor or for like battle. And the separatists find one off the grid one who is entirely made of brass, is called Mr. Crane, and has the brain of a psychopath and is an absolute rampage murderer. However, he does it dressed in like a duster and an overcoat, like an old 40s detective.
Oh, brilliant.
I've got to be honest, this does sound like one of your D&D campaigns, Kev.
It's kind of that thing where it's got like this really cool things. The plots are very standard in that, though. Or at least from the one I read. I've heard he gets a lot better when he kind of goes out of the fringes.
Oh, well, if you've got that much weirdness, you've got to keep one thing kind of on the normal side.
Yeah. But it's it's one of those things, like, is that like it can be very easy to lose people when you start introducing stuff like that. Like, and I mean, I think that's probably one of the things that I really, especially more so with the books than with the show, is I really admire, because like with books you can really just go into the weeds, but I really admire how like the book restrains itself into just giving enough detail to let you populate stuff and not go too far beyond that. Like one of the things it does a lot is it it kind of uses history as a backdrop to help you kind of push forward with it. Like the in season 4 of the show, and it's in book 4 as well, like the villain of it is fantastic, because he's basically like the plot of the show is in the show they go to this brand new discovered planet, and one of the guys who goes there is basically like the villain from Pocahontas, where he's like, well, law isn't here yet, so I can do whatever I want.
Jesus.
Right.
You know, like he's like, law's gonna come, but not right now. You know, and that's like, for a villain to be like that is so interesting, and it just raises a lot of like, you know, it raises a lot of thought evoking. It's really thought evoking and really, really enjoyable. And like, you know, like when that's the kind of way that they present everything. Like there's in the first book, there's this great line where they say like, you know, it's like at the dawn of human race, we used to throw stones at each other to defend to kill our enemies. We're now in the far-flung future, in the present day, we're still throwing rocks at each other, but now they can kill planets. You know, that's a really cool way of framing where they're at. Like,
oh, completely. And like, I will say, between this and revisiting the anime Cowboy Bebop, I've got a real appetite for like future stories where the future isn't quite cooked yet. You know what I mean? Like it's not now, and the Star Trek, we have ships. It's like in that awkward in-betweeny space where everything doesn't quite work, and in fact quality of life is slightly worse where it should be better. Like, you know,
that's very much the idea. That's very much like a common thing in the Expanse, is that like, you know, it's like, well, we're really far ahead, but we're not done yet. You know, and it's really
this
cool.
is not utopia. We're running on duct tape and dreams.
Yeah, basically. And like it's the fact that like so frequently the show and the book call back to history, and it really helps like ingrain it in what it's doing, because you can kind of see that through line for where it's going. Like, you know, it just makes it a bit, it just gives it that there's a level of like satisfaction in thinking about it that Stargate just doesn't match. You know, is the way I kind of, you know, not to cast shade on Stargate, I love it, but like it's just not, it just doesn't make me go like, oh, that's such a clever idea, you know, randomly in my day.
If I can sidebar, actually, I'd recommend, if you're liking Cowboy Bebop, obviously Shinichiro Watanabe, the creator, has gone on to create like a whole slew of really, really great shows. If you're when you finish Cowboy Bebop and you're looking for something more, definitely check out I think it's his most recent show on Netflix a couple of years ago, called Carol and Tuesday. It is.
Oh, was that about musicians or something?
Yeah, it is set in the same universe. I think slightly later on, but it's a whole different scope, where it's these two It's these two girls that like, one of them is like a real kind of like low class, very urbanite black girl, and this like high class, very Princess and the Pauper come together and just try to kind of like just end up becoming this viral musical sensation. And it's just this wonderful, like, it's got that same love of just like music and art that Bebop has. And just like, I adored it. I really, really loved it. And the songs are just completely catchy. And it's just whole kind of, it's a rags to riches story. And just kind of basically set in the same universe. If you're looking for more of that kind of that very specific kind of sci-fi, absolutely look at Carol and Tuesday.
Yeah, that sounds great. But like, excellent. I mean, that's one of the things that's like been so good about the last like few years, is that like it's really never been a better time for sci-fi. You know, and like it's getting that kind of way for fantasy as well. Because like the Wheel of Time has now got a show. You know, like I never thought I'd see that happen. You know, haven't watched it yet, but it's on very much on my list once I finish The Expanse. But like, how did that happen?
Somebody
Thanks,
somewhere.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah, like that's kind of it. Somebody somewhere remembers, like, hey, I remember reading something in the 90s. It was sitting next to Game of Thrones. You have to give that a TV series now.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for Joe Abercrombie to get discovered by some TV producer somewhere. It'd be horrible and Michael Bayish if you put it on TV, but it made for a great book.
But I mean, that's one of probably the sad ironies as well, is that, like, there are great books that probably deserve more time and appreciation than than they currently get. But they also probably just play better as books.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, and we've got a Game of Thrones prequel-y thing coming out this year with Matt Smith. That's based on the book you read, Kev, isn't it? The kind of is it the Targaryen?
It's the Targaryen lineage, as far as I know. I haven't gotten much into research in that TV series because honestly, I keep forgetting about it.
Most people do.
I think most people have kind of passed by on Game of Thrones at this point.
But I did absolutely read Fire and Blood when that came out because I am a sucker for that universe in its book. That's the thing. I'm a sucker for that universe as far as like George writes it, because he's just got this way of writing and fleshing that out. And it is a 700-page tome of a history book that only covers half of the Targaryen lineage from when it began. And I ate it in a month. I was absolutely my jam.
Oh, my God. And now Matt Smith's in it, so something terrible will happen to the production because
that man can't catch a break.
And everything he's attached to is cursed now for some reason, even though he's really good.
Or for some reason it will air and all of his scenes will be cut out.
Morbius is postponed because he's in it. I don't know. The Crown must have just like had some sort of holy relic protecting it. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I think with the Crown, I think what his saving grace was that he wasn't playing Prince Andrew. So like that helped him a lot.
Oh my God, topical humor.
He wasn't playing Andrew or Diana.
No. Yeah. Granted, like, I mean, we could all do with having Matt Smith play Princess Diana at least once.
Oh, I'm sure he'd be up for it.
He's the people's princess.
I'm kind of thinking like I don't know if you've been watching like late stage South Park, but Princess Kenny, but it's just Princess. Princess Matt Smith.
I played those South Park games recently. They're quite good. The one that's kind of based on the so old. Was it the PlayStation 3?
It was PS3. I think they're good because nobody suspected a South Park RPG to be as completely robust as it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the funny thing is that like Trey Parker is like massive D&D fan. Massive. Like he loved what Obsidian did with Fallout, Fallout New Vegas and a few other games. So he was like, no, we want to work with you specifically because we trust you to make a good RPG.
Did Obsidian make Stick of Truth?
Yeah.
Really? I actually didn't know that.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense now.
Yeah, they did Stick of Truth, and they did the second one.
Butthole? Yeah.
The Fractured Butthole.
Yeah.
On a 5, guys. On a 5.
Yeah, exactly. The Fractured Butthole.
Say the comma. Say
W.
the comma.
W, guys.
There isn't a comma in the title, but we have to say it separately because they're separate words. Like they made Obsidian, but like they're handpicked because like Trey was like, well, I don't want to have a speaking character because I hate that in games. So a huge amount of what of stuff that was put into it was purely because he was going like, I don't like when they do that in games. I don't like when that happens, blah, 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 blah. And then like they just wrote jokes based off of that. And he said like, I think the original script was something like 1,000 pages.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
Like it is just basically an interactive simulator. Like compare that to the likes of like some of the Simpsons games and Family Guy games where they are just platformers with jokes,
But even like, I mean, earlier South Park games were like that as well. And like, The two.
There were earlier South Park games.
Oh yeah. Dude, South Park had a first-person shooter on the PlayStation 1. And it is
my God.
surreal.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would the graphics even be like?
Ooh, sweet polygons.
Yeah.
Look at those turkeys. See how many edges it has.
Yeah.
I know. There's some.
It's a hexagon or a triangle. You decide.
My goodness. Excellent.
But that's the way South Park, like those games, I really enjoyed the gameplay of them, but I kind of got bored by them a lot. I found like they were only really good for one playthrough, and then.
Are you talking about the newer ones now?
The newer ones, yeah.
Yeah. I will admit, I did kind of the novelty of like the Stick of Truth wore off after a little while. I'm going to try the superhero one soon as well. My God,
gameplay wise,
polygons for days.
Yeah.
But you love to see
Cartman. I mean, you never look good, but you look rough.
Yeah,
3 dimensions.
for the second one, Keane, the combat does get better. Definitely.
Okay.
They definitely improved it a lot. The boss fights in it are really some of the boss fights in it are really fantastic, but some of them are very frustrating because basically they came up with this turn-based rule set for how combat works, and then every boss subverts that in some kind of way. And some of them do it in a really challenging and engaging way. Some of them do it in a really irritating way. Where if you don't have the right strategy, and this is kind of a good thing about it as well, so if you don't have the right strategy to combat it, you just lose, and you lose really easily. There's a boss fight in it where you fight Kyle, not as in Kyle Broflovsky, his cousin Kyle. He gets upset.
Oh, right, with the glasses and everything, yeah.
Sheila, Kyle's mom, comes in, gets really annoyed, and then basically every second turn is her turn.
Yeah. But I love it when turn-based platformers do that. Like the Steven Universe game had a lovely feature where you could get bonus points if you did attacks and blocks on the rhythm of the music that was playing. Which is such
that's cool.
Steven Universe specific thing. They're like, oh yeah, I love that kind of stuff. It rewards kind of you're paying attention and that kind of stuff.
That's class.
Not like a Final Fantasy game where you can put the controller down and go make a cup of tea in the middle of the most epic, important battle in the history of this planet ever.
Oh, it's the same reason I managed to play several hundred hours of Persona 5. It's because they take the turn-based combat and you're here's a whole slew of other mechanics and interesting features and elemental attacks, and here's how you can chain 6 attacks together in a row, and all to the funkiest jam soundtrack you've ever heard in your life. Turn-based combat can't be the same again. Hey, whoops, we broke it because we made it too good.
There's no going back. You have to make effort now.
Yeah. But effort. That is actually going to be our show this afternoon, guys. It's a great show, but before we go, is there anything you boys would like to plug?
Bryn, you first.
Heavens no.
Excellent. Then I will plug 2 things. My drama classes with ADHD Ireland and All Abilities Ireland are back now. They are on Zoom. You can find them via Eventbrite. They're going out on Fridays and Saturdays. There are classes for adults and classes for young kids. So if you're looking for, especially as we're looking down increasing uncertainty with outdoor events and that kind of stuff, if you're looking to make friends and kind of do fun things and that kind of stuff over the computer, you'll find it all there, and they're all run by me. And I mean, I wish I had someone with me to vouch for me, but they're great fun. So that's where you'll find me. And I'm also on Geek Ireland writing all the stuff there. So that's me.
And as always, you can follow me at KevTalika94 on Twitter, and find me over on youtube.com/The Nancy Crew, running my Greek mythology themed D&D campaign titled The Odyssey of This Bish, BISH. We're on a 5. And that will be it for us. Of course, follow us on all our socials at Nerd to Know Media on all our socials and at nerdtomedia.com. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.